What the hell are we talking about, ladies and gents? Yo, this is gonna be coming from Cinema Fallout. Finally, Hollywood is tired of Will Smith box office flops, goddammit. Yo, I mean, when the last time Will actually put out a good body of work? I can't even tell you, honestly. I just did a video on Jada Pinkett Smith ripping him a new one, unfortunately. I hate this for Will, you know what I'm saying? Like, this dude was larger than life for a lot of people back in the 90s, 2000s and stuff like that, especially if you was like a teenager or a kid and you just was a fan of his movies and shit like that. It's really messed up, really messed up. But let's get to it, y'all.
For 3 decades, Will Smith was Hollywood's most reliable engine. His name on a poster didn't just sell tickets, it guaranteed a cultural event, a $100 million domestic lock, a smile so dependable that studios built their summer schedules around him. But that unbeatable formula has now fractured, shattered by a quiet $14 million burial that no amount of charisma could rescue. However, that very exile just revealed the surprising truth that had been forming for a decade. The slap didn't break Will Smith. The break was already there. And the only path forward requires him to become something he has never allowed himself to be. The cracks, a decade of erosion. The consecutive failures of Will Smith did not arrive as a thunderclap. They arrived as a slow leak. What follows is not a collection of random misfires. It is a sequence of strategic miscalculations, each one carrying its own alibi, its own designated scapegoat, and its own reason to believe the guarantee remained intact. Until, one by one, the alibis ran out. Let's look at these misfires one by one. A. After Earth, 2013. The nepotism catastrophe. The first major crack in the Smith facade arrived with a film that had every appearance of an empire-building event. After Earth was conceived as a dynasty-launching vehicle. Will Smith, starring alongside his son Jaden, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, backed by a $130 million budget from Sony. This was meant to launch Jaden as a legitimate action star and reaffirm Will's ability to open any film in any genre on any planet. The result was a slow-motion disaster.
Yeah, because for one, Jaden doesn't have the persona of his father. You know, that is that. Yeah, I gotta get my thoughts together. That is his father, okay? But he doesn't have the height factor, just the whole, you know what I mean? And naturally, because they're two different people. But I could have told him that. And I didn't even see that movie, to be honest. I didn't even watch that. I don't even know what it's about.
After Earth opened to a tepid $27 million domestically, respectable for a non-franchise film, catastrophic for a Will Smith vehicle. It limped to $60 million domestic, $243 million globally. Against a $130 million production budget, plus an estimated $100 million in global marketing, the film lost tens of millions of dollars. The blame was distributed swiftly and generously. Shyamalan absorbed the majority of the criticism. Critics panned the film's wooden dialogue, its leaden pacing, its failure to deliver the spectacle audiences expected. Others pointed to Jaden, whose performance was deemed too stoic, too unseasoned to carry the emotional weight the film demanded. The narrative was constructed. This was a director's failure, a miscast son, a script that never found its footing. But the whispers told a different story. Trade reports and industry insiders quietly noted that After Earth was a film Smith controlled. He had championed the concept. He had insisted on his son's co-lead status, a decision that shaped the film's marketing, its tone, its very structure. Sony, however, did not publicly abandon its star. The studio had too much invested in the Smith brand, too many future projects in development. The narrative of noble failure was allowed to stand. B. Focus, 2015. The modest return that said nothing. 2 years later, Smith returned with a deliberate downshift. Focus was a $50 million crime dramedy directed by Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, positioning Smith as a slick, charismatic con man opposite a then-rising Margot Robbie. It was, on paper, a return to the formula that had made him famous. Focus grossed $158 million globally. For any other star, this would be a victory. For Will Smith, it was something far more troubling. It was unremarkable. The film opened to $18 million domestically. Its international numbers were solid, but not spectacular. The industry's post-mortem was polite. A solid little film, a nice return to form.
You know what else people gotta understand? Like, this is 2013, 2014. We're talking about a man who at this point is in his 40s. You feel me? Now, I know Denzel Washington and actors of that caliber have had good movies in their 40s, but you know what I mean? It's just, he's getting older. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is that part of their career where it's like movies just stop clicking like that.
A respectable showing. But the silence was louder than any headline. No one called Focus an event or declared it a return to dominance. It was simply a movie. For a star who had once turned $50 million movies into $300 million global phenomena, this was not a comeback. It was a data point. And the data suggested that Smith's name alone could no longer will a mid-tier film into blockbuster territory. C. Collateral Beauty. The prestige miscalculation.
I never seen this shit either.
If Focus was a modest return that revealed little, Collateral Beauty was a prestige gamble that revealed everything. The film was assembled with meticulous award season intent, a $40 million holiday drama directed by David Frankel, featuring an ensemble cast that included Helen Mirren, Edward Norton, Kate Winslet, and Keira Knightley. Smith played a grieving advertising executive who writes letters to abstract concepts, love, time, death, only to receive unexpected responses. The premise was designed for emotional resonance, for Oscar voters, for the kind of tear-jerking prestige that had once delivered Smith his first Best Actor nomination for The Pursuit of Happiness. The result was a critical and commercial disaster. The film grossed $88 million globally, a paltry sum for a star-driven holiday release, and a devastating figure against a marketing spend designed to push it into awards contention. The blame was placed on the script, on the director, on a concept that was never going to land with mainstream audiences. Warner Brothers, the studio behind the film...
You know what the thing is, too? Another thing you got to realize is that this is where you're starting to see a shift in just what people wanted to see. See, for the longest, Will Smith, those $300 million movies were a lot of people who were much older. Your baby boomers, Gen X, the generation he's born in, and, you know, us kids of the 90s and late 80s who were accompanying our parents to the movies because they wanted to see it. So that was multiple tickets that they had to buy. But now, as you're getting into the 2014s, 2015s, now you got those younger adults coming in, teenagers, and their whole way of consuming media is on their phone. They ain't going to the movies like that. They got Fire Sticks and all this other stuff to watch movies. So you got to factor that dynamic in it too.
Quietly absorbed the
audience
loss
is different.
And moved on. There was no public rebuke of Smith, no industry scolding, but the pattern was now undeniable. Smith's instincts for prestige material had become dangerously miscalibrated. The Pursuit of Happiness had earned him an Oscar nomination and $300 million globally. Collateral Beauty earned him a Razzie nomination and a quiet write-down. The gap between those two outcomes was not merely a matter of taste, it was a matter of cultural relevance. Smith was no longer choosing projects that resonated with the broader audience. He was choosing projects that felt out of step, out of time, or simply out of touch. D. Gemini Man, 2019. The technology gambit that backfired. By 2019, the cracks were visible enough that studios began building in contingencies. Gemini Man was conceived as a technological event, a $138 million sci-fi action film. Smith played dual roles, facing off against a younger digital clone of himself, with the promise that the technology would deliver an immersive experience unlike anything audiences had seen. The problem was simple. Audiences did not want to pay a premium to see Will Smith fight a younger Will Smith in a format that made most viewers feel nauseated. Gemini Man opened to $20 million domestically. For Smith, it was another quiet disaster. The film limped to $173 million globally, a number that, against its bloated production budget and massive marketing spend, represented tens of millions in losses. The high frame rate experiment, which Paramount had hoped would justify premium ticket prices, was actively rejected by audiences. Many theaters refused to install the necessary equipment. Moviegoers who did see it in the intended format reported dizziness, visual fatigue, and a persistent sense that something was simply off. This time, the blame was harder to distribute. Ang Lee was an Oscar-winning director, a visionary filmmaker with a track record of critical and commercial success.
Like, look, it ain't
the
my fault.
technology was ambitious, backed by
Nah.
serious investment from Paramount and the Chinese conglomerate Fosun. The concept, a man confronting his younger self, had thematic depth. And yet, audiences simply did not show up. The industry's post-mortem was clinical. Gemini Man became a symbol of a star whose name no longer guaranteed opening weekend commitment. The film's failure was not blamed on Smith alone, but neither was he insulated from it. The narrative was no longer, Will Smith's film failed because of X. It was becoming, Will Smith's films fail. King Richard, 2021. The anomaly that confirmed the rule. Then came the film that was supposed to change everything. King Richard, a $50 million biographical drama about Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams, was positioned as Smith's return to Oscar-caliber material. Directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green and backed by Warner Brothers, the film had all the hallmarks of a prestige success. But King Richard arrived in a moment of profound disruption. The pandemic had decimated theatrical attendance. Warner Brothers, in a controversial strategic shift, released its entire 2021 slate simultaneously on HBO Max, cannibalizing box office potential in exchange for streaming subscriber growth. King Richard opened to a modest $5.7 million domestically, eventually grossing $39 million globally, a figure that, in any other context, would have been considered a failure. But context was everything. The pandemic provided an unassailable alibi, the hybrid release provided another, and Smith's performance was undeniable. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor, a moment of triumph that seemed to erase the preceding decade of erosion. The image of Smith walking to the stage, accepting his first Oscar, was meant to be the final act of a redemption narrative. He had weathered the disappointments, recalibrated his instincts, and delivered the performance of his career. The industry celebrated. The narrative was complete. Except the data told a different story. King Richard's theatrical performance, even accounting for pandemic conditions, was the kind of number that would have been unthinkable for a Will Smith prestige vehicle a decade earlier. The film succeeded as a streaming title, as an awards vehicle, as a critical darling, but it did not succeed as a theatrical event. The question was simple. If King Richard had been released in a normal market, would audiences have shown up? No one could answer definitively. But the silence from studios regarding future prestige vehicles was instructive. Warner Brothers did not rush to greenlight another Smith-led drama. The pattern of erosion had been paused, but it had not been reversed. F. Emancipation, 2022. The Exile. And then came the slap. Will Smith walked onto the stage of the 94th Academy Awards and struck Chris Rock across the face in response to a joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. The moment was surreal, shocking, and instantly historic. Within minutes, the narrative that had been carefully constructed around King Richard was incinerated. In the aftermath, the industry moved with cold, mechanical efficiency. The Academy banned Smith from its events for a decade. Studios that had been quietly developing projects with him paused. And Apple, which had acquired Emancipation for a staggering $120 million out of the Cannes film market, made a decision that would define the film's fate. Emancipation was not going to be a theatrical event. It was going to be a containment strategy. The film received a token theatrical release, A limited run in just over 2,000 screens, minimal marketing, no red carpet premieres, no award season campaign. Smith, still in the midst of the slap's fallout, did not participate in press. The film grossed $14 million globally, a catastrophic return on a $120 million investment. Apple, a company with nearly unlimited resources, absorbed the loss and positioned the film as a streaming exclusive on its platform, where it could be quietly consumed without the brutal public scrutiny of an opening weekend. The industry's reaction was a cold, merciless pragmatism. Will Smith was now too risky for the theatrical marketplace. His name carried baggage that no studio executive wanted to explain to shareholders. His value had been reclassified. He was a streaming asset, a prestige name to be deployed on platforms where viewership metrics replaced opening weekend grosses, where controversy could be managed, where the financial risk could be contained. The $120 million Apple spent on Emancipation was not an investment in Will Smith's theatrical future. It was a sunk cost, paid for the right to own a piece of his brand. The 6 films of this decade-long erosion tell a single story. It is a story of a machine that, film by film, lost its calibration. The alibis ran out. The excuses stopped holding. And when the slap finally came, it did not break a career that was whole. It simply revealed the extent of the breaking that had already occurred.
I think it's even more than that. And it ain't even just Will Smith. I mean, it's all of these actors. Like Hollywood, Hollyweird, however you want to call it. They ran out of ideas, man. They ran out of ideas as far as movies. Now, I know that, Ryan Coogler and those guys, they made the movie Sinners. I mean, there's some good gems here and there, but we are a far cry from the decades of where it seemed like every single year, everybody was trying to outpace one another or outdo each other. So we kept getting banger after banger after banger, especially through the 90s. The 90s had to probably be like peak movies. Now, the 2000s was cool. We got a lot of gems in the 2000s, but slowly but surely, as we got through the 2010s into the 2020s, it just started to dwell off, you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure a lot of y'all would agree with me. Like, that's really the issue. It's just Hollywood we ran out of gas when it comes to movies, man. We've seen it all.
The guarantee was gone. The question was no longer whether Will Smith could return to dominance. The question was whether he could return at all. The diagnosis: why the Fresh Prince formula stopped working. The failures spanning a decade were not random. They were symptoms of a deeper structural misalignment between Will Smith and the industry he once dominated. The formula that built his empire had not grown tired. It had been rendered obsolete. To understand the fall, understand the rise. Smith's career was built on a singular insight. Audiences wanted to spend time with him, not his characters. From Fresh Prince to Bad Boys to Independence Day, he offered the same product: the clever, confident, morally sound everyman who won through charm. He never played villains. He never embraced ambiguity. For 3 decades, it worked. Then the world changed, and the formula did not. First, the curse of invulnerable charisma. Smith built a career on being unthreatening, the action hero who made you laugh, the dramatic actor who never got too dark, the romantic lead who never made you uncomfortable. Safe, predictable. Audiences knew exactly what they were getting. But safety curdled into predictability. The industry began celebrating the opposite: chameleons who disappeared into roles, who courted danger, who asked audiences to sit with discomfort. Christian Bale, Joaquin Phoenix, Adam Driver. Even in blockbusters, stars like Robert Pattinson and Zendaya balance mass appeal with the willingness to be strange. Smith remained what he had always been. The pursuit of happiness was earnest, but not dark. Ali was physically transformative, but not psychologically unsettling. Even in King Richard, the character's edges were sanded down into warmth and safety. The audience craved the unexpected, and Smith had become the most expected thing in Hollywood. Second, the collapse of the mid-budget star vehicle. Smith's dominance was built on a category that no longer exists theatrically: the $50 to $80 million star-driven vehicle. Bad Boys, Enemy of the State, I, Robot, Hitch. These were the engine of the studio system, mid-budget, star-driven, reliably profitable. That engine has seized. The theatrical marketplace now has two extremes: the $200 million event tentpole, Marvel, DC, Cameron, and the $10 million horror or art house film. The middle ground, Smith's native habitat, has migrated to streaming. Netflix, Amazon, and Apple now produce the films that once defined his career. Smith's skill set remains valuable, but the venue has shifted. And unlike peers like Tom Cruise, who embraced franchises or pivoted early to streaming, Smith continued developing projects that belonged to an earlier era. The audience, conditioned to expect either spectacle or intimacy, no longer knew what to make of them. Third, the toxic math of the Will Smith package. The economics have become structurally unsustainable. Smith's fee, $20 million up front, plus back-end, producing fees, creative approvals, was designed for an era when his films routinely grossed $500 million. Now they grow...
Yeah, so basically the production companies, the Paramounts, the Columbias and stuff like that, they basically had no issue paying you $20 million up front because they knew they were going to make triple that money when the movie hit theaters, you know, with all of the marketing and the soundtrack. Movies don't even have soundtracks anymore. That's crazy. But that, just everything, you know what I'm saying? They knew they were going to make their money back. So they had no issue giving a nigga $20 million up front. Now, shit, they'd be lucky if they make $20 million off that damn movie, for real.
Was $150 to $200 million. Or, in the case of Emancipation, $14 million. For studio executives, the question has shifted from, can he open a movie? To, is the liability worth the potential reward? Increasingly, the answer is no. Fourth, the slap as accelerant. The Oscar slap did not create Smith's decline. It made it undeniable. For a decade, the industry had quietly adjusted expectations. But the slap stripped away the one asset that had always insulated Smith from the consequences of failure: his likability. It transformed him from the most beloved man in Hollywood into a figure of controversy, unpredictability, and risk. Could he do a press tour without the slap being asked about? Could a studio put his face on a poster without it being filtered through that memory? For most studios, the answer was no. The industry responded with the coldest mechanism in its arsenal: silence. Development slates went quiet. Projects were shelved. Smith was not fired.
You know, the crazy thing about that is that, kind of like he said, Will Smith has always had like that good guy, clean, charismatic image about him. And a lot of production companies and movie makers played on that. And that's why he got a lot of the movies he got. But like he said, it became predictable. You know what I mean? And the one time he does something that is just like left field, it's like he's blackballed, so to speak. You know what I mean? But it's like, yo, I just wanted to, y'all claim I was predictable and all of that. He's like, he probably just had enough. You know, my marriage is being ran through the mud and all that. I got a wife that really ain't fucking with me like that. Yeah, he had enough of that.
He was simply no longer considered. The question is no longer whether Smith can return to dominance. The question is whether there is a place for him at all. The answer is not a theater. It is a screen. It is a stream. It is a future where his name still carries value, but not the value it once did, and not in the venue where he built his empire. The era of Will Smith as a theatrical guarantee is over. The reaction. Hollywood's cold new calculus. Hollywood operates on precedent, not sentiment. Will Smith's decade-long erosion, capped by the Oscar slap and the quiet burial of Emancipation, has been processed through this merciless logic. The result is a clear, calculated response. The era of blind faith is over. The silence of development slates. Where once a Will Smith announcement was a quarterly event, there is now a conspicuous drought. The I Am Legend sequel has stalled. The Aladdin follow-up has been indefinitely delayed. The blank check phase of his career is over. The streaming containment strategy. Emancipation created a revelatory data point. The message was clear. Smith's name still holds value, but not in theaters. On streaming, his appeal can be leveraged without the punishing risk of an opening weekend. His future projects will reflect this. Mid-budget action films, prestige dramas, passion projects, all will be developed for Netflix, Apple, and Amazon. It is a viable future, but a demotion. Streaming pays well. It does not confer the status of a theatrical star. The restructured leverage. The leverage Smith once wielded has been severely diminished. Future contracts will feature tighter budgets, risk-sharing arrangements, and compensation structured around performance metrics. His producing footprint will be audited. His approval rights will be narrowed. The two-tiered future. For theatrical, Smith's roles will be confined to pre-existing franchises where risk is mitigated by built-in audiences and ensemble casts. For streaming, everything else will live on platforms where viewership metrics replace opening weekend pressure. The unspoken truth. Smith's decline is not merely financial, it is cultural. The audience that made him a universal star has fragmented. The universal star is an endangered species. Smith was the last of that breed. His fall is not just his own, it is the closing of an era. Hollywood has made its calculation. The silence of development slates, the retreat to franchise safe harbors, the migration to streaming, all speak to a single conclusion. The industry is no longer waiting for Will Smith to return. It has built a future without him. Whether he
Makes sense. Let's end the video. Yeah, I mean, everything that he pretty much said, I, for the most part, agree with. You know, we're just in a different time, man. You know, waves, they crash, and then there's new waves, and then those waves crash. You know, Will Smith pretty much was riding a heck of a wave through the 90s, through the 2000s, and it was a good ride, but all waves must crash. You know what I'm saying? This isn't to say you still can't swim. You know what I'm saying? Like he said, you can row your boat gently down the damn stream. God damn it. You better be streaming. You feel me? And get your money that way. I don't know how that's going to work out in the long run because, you know, he's always been, hey, that $20 million a movie type of guy. And he's just not that guy anymore where he can just demand 20 million and they know they're going to get a return on their investment. You know what I'm saying? And then with the whole slapping thing, it just really tarnished his image. I'm going to tell you this. I think where Will Smith probably might have messed up a bit is when he decided to go on Instagram and just give us too much of what he has going on. That was something else I seen in the video. They was talking about how these celebrities once had this mystique about them. You didn't really know too much about them. So that's what kept you interested or kept that allure about them. But now we know everything about them, especially him. We know all his dirty laundry, all that shit. So that really didn't help him at all. But I'll be sure to link this video in case y'all want to go check out some more of their videos, support them. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, make sure you click all the buttons and all of y'all talks amongst each other in the comments. All right? It's your boy Robbie, and until the next video, we gone.